Hi, everyone. I'm Sam, one of the teen librarians at the Monroe County Public Library.
I'm Macklin. I am also one of the teen librarians at the Monroe County Public Library.
I'm Lindsay, and I am the prevention coordinator with Middleway House, and I do a bunch of the teen programming around town.
And this is Ask Anything, a collaborative program between Middleway House and the library.
So the first question is, what kind of local support is available for teens during COVID-19? And one of the things we tried to do as soon as folks started to be asked to shift to being mostly at home was put together a guide and resource that looked at resources for teens who are mostly stuck in their homes or whose social lives and the spaces that they used to move to, like school and after school activities, had really shifted. The guide looks like this. It's available on the library webpage, and we'll show you at the end of this how to get there. It's also available on the Middleway House Prevention site. It's the first link at the top of the Middleway House Prevention site. And it's being distributed in hard copies around town to every place that's designated as a safe place. You can access it in multiple ways. And one of the things that's at the very beginning of this, if you'll scroll down to the next page, Sam, we have some Zoom support groups. While people can't be in person, there are these two spaces that you can get in touch with me. My email is in this. You can see lindsay@middlewayhouse.org at the end. But there are two specific groups that we are continuing to support for young folks who want to have sort of the support in network with other teens. The first is Teen Peer Advocacy, which is a group that we put together to have teens either with their friends or in anonymous circles get to think about how they support each other during this time. And there are mentors, adult mentors, who help facilitate these, but a lot of the work is actually done by the teens in these circles who want to brainstorm together how to really help each other out during this time. The other group is facilitated by a local counselor and a Middleway House staff, and it is focused really specifically on supporting folks who've had traumatic experiences and experienced sexual violence in their life so that they still have a network of support in a time when they feel sometimes kind of trapped in their homes. The question is, what if you need someone to talk to right now? People need to talk about a lot of different things, and I think there are some best answers based on what you need to talk about with people. So we have hotlines and online resources in this guide. The first is the Middleway House line. It's a 24/7 line. It's confidential, which means it doesn't record your phone number, your incoming phone number. And unless you disclose any identifying information about yourself, they don't know who you are. So unless you give them your name and any information about yourself, they can't track you. They are prepared to safety plan with you, and they are prepared to listen to you and believe you for things that you have gone through. And we specifically support folks who have been affected by domestic violence, sexual violence, or human trafficking. There's a national line called Love is Respect, where a lot of teens call specifically about dating violence. This link tree isn't a talk line, but it's a lot of great resources for teens who are at home right now. So there are a couple lines here that I like to point out. Going through the guide, you can get some other ideas, but one that I really like to emphasize for folks who identify as LGBTQ+ is the Trevor line. They've got a really fantastic crew of folks who are great listeners and have created a really judgment-free place for folks to talk. The National Runaway Safe Line is a spot that folks often call if they have been bullied or are thrown out of their homes or want to discuss experiences of not having safe housing. And this line's also cool. It's a resource line. So if you end up running away and end up in Arkansas and aren't safer there, they'll pay for a bus to get back to your home. And so it's a pretty great resource to talk to people if you're at a place where you're experiencing a crisis where you're thinking about running away or you have run away. And then the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline isn't just for teens, but it's a great line for folks who are experiencing crisis and are afraid of losing their own lives. And also for talking if you're a person who's experienced other folks who are feeling suicidal or who you have lost to suicide. It's a spot that really creates some space for those really big crises that we experience. And then finally on this page is the IcarusProject.net, and they have a safety page, a crisis page, where they have a couple warm lines where people can call, even if you're not in like a really big crisis. If you're just feeling off and you need someone to talk to, I really like recommending the Icarus Project for that. Our next question is, what makes a good safe place? How does Safe Place work during COVID? So Safe Place is locally hosted by the Youth Service Bureau. It has a shelter and it has counselors. So the actual official Safe Place program is facilitated by this local organization that's still open. And you can call and someone can come to any designated safe place or connect with you. When someone from Safe Place does an intake with you and decides that you would be a good fit for the shelter, they will tell you their name over the phone. And when they show up typically to a safe place. All of the Safe Place designated spaces are still available to teens, and they will show you an ID that has the name on it that matches the name that they told you on the phone. So it's a way that you know you're really connecting with the right person. Safe Place Shelter is a spot that teens can stay if they don't feel safe in their homes. Young people often choose Safe Place if they aren't feeling safe, but also are afraid their families might re-extract them from a friend's house that they run away to, or a different parent's house who doesn't have custody. Parents can't get police to extract kids from Safe Place from the YSB shelter. And so it's been really important for a lot of young people who feel like they need to flee from their families to have that as a resource and to know that their parents just can't send police to get them right back. If you go to Safe Place, they try really hard to have you have another spot to land that isn't a shelter in 21 days, so in 3 weeks. It has been true that kids have stayed at Safe Place longer, but during that time, they spend a lot of time working with young people and their families if it does feel like something can be reconciled. And if it doesn't, they work really hard on listening to what the young person might need and who they might feel safe with living with for the long term beyond that. People definitely make safety plans that include safe places that are their personal safe places. Like if I was struggling, when I was struggling as a teen, I knew of a couple of adults that were really safe for me, and I had their names and numbers written down so that if things went wrong in my household, I could connect with adults I already knew and trusted. It was true then and is true now that if parents find out where you are and it's your parents that are dangerous to you, that they can get the police to bring you back from those spaces in a way that they couldn't with the designated safe place at YSB. Middle Way House is also a designated safe place if you are fleeing with one of your parents or are with a legal guardian. We have family rooms, and you can stay with your family and other siblings at Middle Way House if that meets your situational needs. And if you're a person between the ages of 16 and 20, Stepping Stones also serves young folks who might otherwise be experiencing homelessness and can set up apartments and transitional housing for young folks for up to 2 years. And this program, right now I checked in and they're still operating as they always were, and they have some openings right now. So the wait time for Stepping Stones is actually less than it used to be during this pandemic, which is really good to know if you're needing to find a safe place to be. How do I help a friend who's experiencing harm? This is a question that we get a lot, and I think it's really important that we're there for our friends. In the guide, we think a little bit differently about supporting friends during COVID because everything's electronic, which means that a person who's experiencing harm might be experiencing harm in their household, and you won't be able to read the situation to see if a person who's hurting them is close by or is monitoring their electronics or what their situation is. And so one of the things that we really recommend while you're trying to check in on your friends right now is to let them take the lead, not to pressure them to make decisions, but also not to pressure them to talk about things that might end up risky for them. You as a friend, especially a friend who wants to help a friend who's experiencing harm, are probably going to want to be one of the first people that your friend reaches out to. And it's really important that you're a listener and that you offer non-judgmental space And that if you're checking back in on a person who's disclosed something, who's told you about something, maybe come up with a code word, symbols that they could send to you that would tell you to get in touch with someone that they asked you to get in touch with, setting up some system with electronics that someone who's hurting them wouldn't necessarily know, but that you could have some codes between you, and making sure that you know the communication formats that are the safest for people. One of the things that I recommend a lot during this time is if you know a friend is struggling and is experiencing harm, is to have them set up a My Plan through My Plan app. If you know that a friend is experiencing harm, or if you just want to, you know something about your friend's situation and you want to download this app for yourself and go through and figure out some good strategies, you can put in a lot of personalized information like quizzes. It's all locked. So the first thing you do is you meet a lock screen and you set a lock password for this app. And then you decide if you want to go through and kind of take quizzes about helping a friend or about helping yourself. And it helps you build a safety plan that's really specific to your needs. Maybe your friend is a teen parent. Maybe your friend is in a situation where their partner isn't that safe for them and one of their parents isn't that safe for them. There's very specific things that are true for your friend can kind of be plugged in, or true for you can kind of be plugged in, so you can build a really specific safety plan. And that safety plan will stay available to you, but behind a lock screen. The actual app shows up on your phone with this little leaf. It kind of looks like a fitness app. And to click it, you have to put in a PIN code. And so it is one way to create an extra level of protection and safety on a safety plan that you could keep with you. And we really recommend that people work with safety plans during this time. The very last page of this guide is pink. And it has 5 things to say to a friend who's experienced harm. A lot of times when people experience harm, they get asked some hard questions like, are you sure that happened? Or like, was it really that big of a deal? Are you overreacting? Or they're told like, you need to leave that person. You need to go. You should call the police. You have to go to the hospital. And both those reactions, the questioning and the reaction of like telling someone what to do, is often really hard for a person who's experienced harm. So some of the things we recommend if you want to support a friend is to start by saying, hey, I believe you. It's not your fault. I'm here for you. Let me know what you need. What do you want to do from here? Making sure they feel like they have the power, and then asking again, do you want to make a safety plan through this? And for this time, I really recommend that you use the My Plan app for safety planning. But we also have an electronic version of a safety plan that isn't an app. If you don't have a smartphone, but you do have a computer, you can use My Plan for it. But you can also go to the Middleway House Prevention page, and in our final links page, we'll make sure that we have the link that shows you where a safety plan that you could fill out or talk through over the phone is also available to you.
So this one, what can you do to help when you're feeling down? And that can also involve a lot of the things from safety planning, where you reach out to a friend. Maybe you make plans to try to get together, via Zoom, like what we're doing right now, or phone call or text, or you can all put on masks and meet at a socially distant, safe place in a park. Like any of those things are good options to try to just help, get through everything that we're going through right now. And I know Macklin and Lynn's probably have some other tips too.
Yeah, I know for me, part of the hardest part of this global pandemic has been the feeling of isolation. And so, as Sam suggested, picnics in the park have been really, really fantastic. Be there in person for people. And I know that's also helped other people. It doesn't just help me. It helps everyone involved when you physically see people. If that's not possible, video chatting is a really great option. And also being able to know how to take care of yourself is really important. So really take some time, sit down, really think about what it is that makes you feel better and what can you provide for yourself.
Kind of building on both of those, Sam mentioned safety plan and Macklin mentioned kind of knowing what your needs are. And one of the things, the simplest safety plan I think I like to have is for people to identify 5 people that they could reach out to when they're feeling really down. and 5 things that they know are things that kind of get their energy moving if they feel stuck or sad. And I have that in the front of my journal. I just have a safety page where I list 5 people I know I could call, and 5 things I know I could do when I'm feeling really down. And because sometimes when you're down, like when you're already feeling really bad, it's hard to come up with the way to get yourself out of it. So doing that work when you're in a spot that feels okay and making those short lists and putting it in a place where you can access it can sometimes help move you out of that. It's all right to feel sad right now too. It's all right to feel overwhelmed. It's what we do with those feelings that matter. And I think sometimes our goal is to just stop feeling those bad feelings. And we know about the brain and about the body that if you let yourself feel some of the harder feelings and find a way to move through those feelings, you end up healthier in the long run too. So I think it is important for us to figure out how we manage our feelings, but also give ourselves a lot of room to feel our feelings in safe ways. Sometimes talking to people we know are safe to talk about our feelings with. If we don't have 5 people, identifying a couple hotlines in that list that you'd be willing to call that seem related to some of the things that you're going through might be a really great strategy, just so that you have a mini safety plan for when you're feeling really down. The question is the monitoring of a young person's electronics and internet activity allowed? Technically, yes. There are a lot of things that parents are legally permitted to control in their kids' lives. And there are a couple other people who are legally permitted to monitor your things. It's anyone who has control or power in your life through a law called in loco parentis. This is typically extended to school administrators and teachers, though you're not engaging them very often right now, but also to step parents and others who function in parental roles to people. And so if you are under the age of 18, your parents and anyone protected under in loco parentis laws have a lot of rights, including to monitor your electronic devices and internet activity. And if those are people in your life who are hurting you, it feels extra hard to feel like you have spaces to reach out. There are a couple places that are confidential lines. So if you find a safe way to make a phone call and connect, there's no way that certain places like Middleway House could report back. And if you look through the hotline list, there are a couple that say they're confidential lines. The National Suicide Prevention Line is a confidential line. In the state of Indiana, we also have mandatory reporting laws, which means that if you call even a confidential line and say, my name's Lindsay Badger, I'm 15 years old, I'm experiencing violence in my house, my dad, Charles, I've given enough information in that the person on the other end of the line would be required by the law to make a report. So if you are wanting to talk to someone confidentially and keep your information quiet, not giving away identifying information, I could call and say, hey, I'm a teenager. I don't have to give a person my name at all. And I could say, there's a person, I could say my dad's hurting me, but that's not enough information for someone to make a report. And so if you're worried about your information being monitored, if you're worried about sharing information and having it disclosed, I want you to really understand the law so that you understand how you can make choices to be as safe as you possibly can with information that you're sharing. Typically, unless your parents have a recording device set on your phone for your phone calls are not recorded and kept. And you would be able to tell if there's a recording mechanism that's on your phone. And if you have questions about how to tell if there's a recording element put on your phone, you can call Middleway House's legal team, and they can tell you a lot more about the laws and about monitoring and what sort of monitoring that people even use. If you are being monitored by someone who is not your legal guardian or who is not protected by in loco parentis laws, that is not legal. It is not okay. Sometimes partners even try to talk each other into like sharing passwords or putting monitoring apps on each other's phones. I haven't seen that go well for anyone. And I would strongly recommend that if someone asks you to be able to monitor, or if they put something on your phone, that you learn how to get that monitoring app off of the phone, off of the device, and that you really find ways to protect your privacy. You have the right to that in all situations that are not with your legal guardian. Simply because the law says your parents can access it, it doesn't mean that you have to disclose everything to them. So I recommended the My Plan app earlier, which has a passcode on it. If your parents could technically ask the legal system to force you to give them that password, but that process takes a little bit of time. So checking in if you have safety concerns about your devices being monitored, checking in again with our legal team at Midway House is a pretty good idea. I want you to make sure that you can share your specific situation and get specific answers for that. But I hope that's all. My relationships have to be at home and online, and or if COVID-19 gets bad again and these restrictions get worse, what do I have to think about with safety in my dating relationships? I think people are increasingly thinking about tech safety. And I think the last question got us into thinking a little bit about tech safety and privacy, which I think is a consideration not just with you and your parents, but also a consideration in your other relationships and with people you meet online. There are some specific considerations for safety planning in an increasingly technology-based relationship world. So we recommended hang out with your friends on Zoom. You're probably spending a lot more time chatting and texting and Instagramming with your friends than you ever did. And also maybe meeting new people online and in these different forums. And so we've put together a little guide about some things to think about in terms of safety for you with this new way of engaging people. And we want you to have this resource. It's in the last set of hyperlinks. It will also be posted on the library page in the Midway House. It's already on the Midway House page. Otherwise, with relationships, a lot of the things about healthy relationships that we think about all the time still stand. This is a power and control wheel that we often share with folks, because it gives us a really good sense of some of the unhealthy patterns that show up as behaviors in relationships with this first wheel, things that we see as practices that are part of relationships that feel really power imbalanced, where one person is trying to enact quick power over the other person and uses some strategies that make the relationship unbalanced and ultimately kind of unsafe. We have an equality wheel. Equality is the idea of power balancing. Where people are equal in a relationship. These relationships are harder work to actually create situations where people share power in really equitable ways. But in this wheel, we have a lot of the things that we think about and the things we see in really healthy relationships. When we look at the power and control wheel at the other wheel, you can often see a couple things that are part of your relationships. And when you look at that wheel, you can often also see there's some things on this wheel that I've done that I'm not that proud of, that are behaviors, maybe even habitual behaviors, things I keep doing. And our nonviolence wheel, our equality wheel, maps kind of to the opposite. It has some ideas about things that we can practice. Right now, you're in a place where you have maybe more time than you have before to think a lot about what it means to be in a healthy relationship. And we emphasize this for teens because you're at this great point in your life where your prefrontal cortex isn't totally built. And what you're working on in your teen years is your relationship brain. The parts of your brain where you're building infrastructure, you're building the actual structure that's going to set patterns for the rest of your life. So if you're able to assess your relationships, even if your relationships right now are over the phone relationships mostly, or over text relationships mostly, maybe it's a really good time to think about some of the healthier patterns that you could try to start to build. The patterns you set now set the foundation for the relationships for the rest of your life. A lot of times people dismiss teenage relationships and are you're not going to date that person forever. You're best friends now, but after high school, you'll never talk to each other again. Even if that's true, I'd say these are the most important relationships of your life, because they're the relationships that are setting patterns for you that are going to be so hard to break later. Learning now what healthy relationships look like will be really helpful for later.
There's a quick question in the chat as well.
Yeah. One of the participants says, my friends have started hanging out at each other's houses. I don't think that it's safe yet because of COVID. Am I overreacting? I'm scared of losing my friends because of this. That's a really important concern.
So
A lot
I'm
of
going to happen a
folks,
little bit on this one. My friends and I have all been very aware of COVID, and we have only just now in the past like 2 weeks started seeing each other. But when we do that, we make sure to go to someone's house who has a very large yard, and we wear masks and we stay 6 to 10 feet apart at all times. So I don't think that you are overreacting, because it's all about how you feel safe and what risks you think are okay. And that's really, really important.
A lot of the risk assessment that people are doing right now is how like isolated do I feel versus like how safe do I stay for the virus. And you can do everything perfectly and stay in your house, but that doesn't really feel good to a lot of people. And so, as Sam said, seeing people outside at a safe distance with a mask on is relatively safe. But I don't think you're overreacting about going into other people's homes. That's probably not the safest thing yet.
I think to respond to the concern of being scared of losing your friends, I think identifying that is really important in these moments where we're at a place where it's really hard to all make the same decision or all feel really safe all the time. Using the strategy of using phrases like I feel and I need become even more important. So instead of using blaming language or accusing people of getting things wrong during this time, saying something like, hey, I feel scared of losing you, but I need to work within the parameters or work within the things that make me feel safe. I don't really feel safe to do that yet. And then like Sam said, like suggesting something that you do feel safe, knowing what your boundaries are. Like I feel safe going to the park and hanging out a little distance from you. Mm-hmm. I feel safe right now texting and checking in a couple weeks to see how we feel about other engagements. But acknowledging, like being open about that fear that you have, the fear of losing them, I think is really important. And when you identify fears like that, it can really help maintain the connection that you have with them. Mm-hmm. Sam, do you want to talk a little bit about the library resource page too?
Yeah, so this resource page is pretty narrowly focused on making sure that there are like the library resources that have been compiled about like health news, local news, and Indiana news about like health and safety. But then also these are the different lunch and breakfast schedules for the different school districts that are free throughout the summer. And this one also is just Be Well Indiana is focused on the mental health aspects of COVID and how it's hit all of us pretty hard. It's Easy Awkward also tries to focus on that. We have a much more extensive list of resources on our Instagram at NCPL Indiana Teen. There's a link tree there that you can go to. But this is a really helpful place to go if you're looking for just some quick resources. And then the library COVID resources page is another great place to go that will really, like I said, link to a lot of like local, national, and state resources.
So the things that we referenced throughout the guides that Sam just showed you are top of this list. And then the resource guide that I cited a lot when I was answering the early questions is there's 2 sites for Safety Plan. One is the My Plan app that I mentioned, and then the other one is kind of a paper safety plan that you can work through. There was a question that came in about consent, and we will probably answer questions about consent in our next Ask Anything, but that link is still there, and the healthy, unhealthy relationship wheels and tech safety that I referenced during the question and answer also are posted there. We're going to meet again. We're going to do this again at 2 p.m. on June 30th.
And it'll be the same system of just fill out that form, and that's how you'll get the Zoom link.
Thank you all for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much. And yes, again, we'll see you June 30th at 2 p.m. for the next one.
Take care.